You can't say, I am something, and keep saying it and keep saying it. If you do that, then you will end up in a mental hospital. If you say, I am Jesus Christ, I am Jesus Christ, I am Jesus Christ, I am Jesus Christ. After a while, people say, I know it's Sunday, not the best time to arrange an admission, but we're going to do that. Because, and this is very interesting in relation to everything else we've been talking about, it's very odd if somebody says the same thing again and again. Sometimes kids do that. Like if they're in the back of the car on a long journey, they get into just saying, I'm a spaceman, I'm a spaceman, I'm a spaceman. Shut up. But generally speaking, we human beings keep redefining ourselves. If you meet someone in a cafe to have a chat, they're going to tell you different things. If they're telling you 101 versions of the same thing, you kind of, I think you've already told me about that. Because we want change and variety. That is a two-edged point, isn't it? That's like sort of Janus. It's facing in two directions. The more stories we tell, the more we can be wound into a never-ending revelation of something, because we never get to the bottom of who we are. Or we can catch it in the moment. Oh, I am able to say all these different things about myself because myself is not a definable thing. So when I say I, who is the one who says I? What is this I? That is the door. Sometimes looks like a very small door, sometimes looks like a completely always open door into the natural condition, which is the mind is a radiant awareness or presence, a presence devoid of inherent content, and therefore the host, the sphere of hospitality of all experiences. The very emptiness of my mind allows me to be everything that I've ever been, and allows all the possibilities of samsara and nirvana. So, seeing this, looking into it, you can read in the book there, Simply Being, there are many descriptions of this, translated from the traditional Tibetan text. In seeing this and relating it to ourselves in the meditation, we start to see that all the points where we snarl up, where we turn in on ourselves, where we become convoluted, knotted against ourselves, or overexcited and a bit manic, whenever we get into something, we're on about something, we're carried hither and thither. These are all movements within the sphere of the mind. Whatever we say about ourselves is both true and a lie. Because, in a while it'll be lunchtime, so it'll be reasonable to say, I'm hungry. If you have some lunch, and then somebody offers you some food, you say, I'm not hungry. And they say, yeah, but you told me at 12 o'clock you were hungry. So I've gone to the shop and I've got you some food. You should eat it. It's only polite. Yeah, but I'm not hungry now. Oh, so you were hungry then and you're not hungry now, huh? What kind of a person are you? Lying and cheating, misleading me, huh?
Not least two-faced.
So, everything we say is true situationally, in a particular context, according to the dependent co-origination. These many factors create the situations. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm happy, I'm sleepy, I'm excited, I'm bored. It arises. It is situationally important, and we might choose to voice it and work with it, and then it's gone. Bringing these things together, we have the natural openness of the mind, the immediate spontaneous presence in the field of experience, a field of experience which has never been cut. There is no splitting, there is no inside this, and inside this there are ceaseless movements of diversification. This means I'm hungry, I'm tired, and so on, is expressing momentary manifestation in a situation grounded in emptiness. Emptiness has a field within which unique specific gestures are occurring all the time. The integration of these three aspects of our being is the understanding of Dzogchen. When we are caught up in the specific manifestations, in how we are in the moment, and when we try to solve that manifestation by applying the antidote of other manifestations, life tumbles on, and we have the ceaseless busyness of endlessly trying to correct ourselves. So if you have a mountain bike and you go out in the Peak District, because the ground is rough, you're having to adjust your balance in a very dynamic way, moment by moment. That is an activity. If you don't keep adjusting your balance, you're going to fall over. You have to be balanced to keep going. This is the work of the ego. It's always trying to rectify the tilts which are brought about by circumstances to make it okay. We do that in our own particular ways. Some people are very placatory as a way of trying to lower the danger from an aggressive others. Others are very emollient. They're kind of trying to make everything sweet. Other people become aggressively dominating and controlling. But these are all moves to try to stabilize the imbalances which occur in the field of manifestation just because it's turbulent. It's always turbulent. From the point of view of Dzogchen, this is not to see the real problem, because as long as you only are attending to manifestation, everything that happens is very real. It's kind of banging into you. Not another thing. Oh, I've had enough. We get overwhelmed and filled up with stuff. And of course in that situation we become impulsive. In the British prison system there are a fair percentage of people, but I'm sure it's less than half, who have committed clearly intentional crimes. But many people are there because of impulsivity. And as we know, especially in women's prisons, there are very high degrees of mental distress that was present before these unfortunates went into prison. So that force of being filled up and over-connected with the world and becoming hypersensitive to what other people do, to feeling that you have to stand up for yourself and defend yourself. That fragile ego skin is a great source of getting into trouble. It's found in all the different kinds of so-called personality disorders. That's a very kind of unfortunate and unnecessary movement in samsara. From the point of view of Dzogchen, what is missing is the integration in the natural openness of being. Being here means just presence as aware potential. The awareness is awareness of the openness, just, Within that there is always the potential. There's the potential of the situation and the potential of our qualities. And these patterns are ceaselessly manifesting. The Tibetan word for that is hlundrup, which means instantly formed, or all of a piece. That the world arises all of a piece. So when we turn and look out the window, we see bits of the cars, bits of the building, and so on. We don't build it up one piece at a time as if you were doing a painting. It arrives all at once. You wake up in the morning and everything's there all at once. So that's a thing to attend to. the immediacy of experience, and then by being present in the immediacy, what you're called upon to do will appear. You know, if you have to be with other people, if you're a teacher or a parent or work in a shop, how will you speak to different customers, different children? Well, it helps if you see the child you're going to speak to. The child will show how they are. Having seen what they have shown, you respond to that. That's not very difficult. But if you have an agenda in your head about how a child should be, and if you have already formulated a reading of how that child is, in your interaction with the child, you're going to introduce your preformed interpretation, and that will be a violence to the child in this moment. It's not that the idea in your head about the child is necessarily wrong as an overall account of the average behavior of the child, but in this particular moment, what is the state of this person? And from the Dzogchen point of view, you're only really going to be able to know that if you are fully present, which means you're in your belly, you have a kind of feel of the person, you're in your heart, you're open to the person, you're in your senses, you're seeing how they are. That gives you the richest possible account of how that person is. And then, because you are present, you have access to the widest domain of your own repertoire of responses, and so their being and your being arise together. And that's the non-dual co-emergence, which is the ceaseless unfolding of our being together in the world with others. So these are the three factors: openness, the aesthetic immediacy, and the gestures which occur within that in an ongoing basis. For example, to use an example I think I've used many times when I've been in Macclesfield, when I travel in the underground in London, I see people with their feet on the seats. When I was a child, someone would have said, "Take your feet off the seat." They wouldn't have had to say, "Look, there's a notice on the window." They'd just say, "Take your feet off the seat," and the other person would say, "I'm sorry." Nowadays in London, what is the permission to say that? So in my head, I may want to say, "Take your feet," or even, "Please take your feet off the seat." But my belly is telling me the social contract that gives permission to say that is asunder. It's gone. Kaput. So that's why we have to be through these different aspects of ourselves. Because if we're not in communication with all these levels of information, and we shoot out from some limited position in ourselves or self-state, the message that whacks out onto the world is likely to cause a disruption. It's not going to be a smooth arrival. So, relaxed and open, present to the entire field, which is not based on cognitive processing. It doesn't mean that you've got some rapid computer that's analyzing all the data. It's just the immediate receptivity that shows us what's there, and then the gestures arise. And the interesting thing about that gesture is you don't have to think about it. And it's okay, because you're in time. Openness is always present in time as it is, because time is just this open, open, open. And the immediate rising of everything is within the openness. So if you're connected and you speak, you connect. It's just like that. Generally speaking, the more we practice this, we won't bump into other people. The right words will come out of your mouth because you're there. And that's a marvelous thing. And certainly working in the sphere of therapy, and sometimes with groups, families, couples, individuals, again and again, what I can see is people are out of time. And because they're out of time, they're out of rhythm with the people they're connected with, and so they bang into them. Because they spend time in themselves, either in making over-elaborate formulations of what they want to say and how they want to be, which is just mismatching where the other person is, or it all comes out in a sudden blurb as an impulsive gesture, and again it misses the other person. Because they've been in their own time, the time of their memories, cooking it over. Well, last time we met you said that, and I've got to tell you, and da-da-da. Okay, but you're saying that last time I didn't listen to you, and I've come in from work, and I'm tired, and you're bending my ear, you're not seeing me. And it just goes on and on and on. Because we're into the future, planning, hopes. What do we need to do? Anxiously trying to control what hasn't yet come? Or caught up in the past, it's not fair. Why did you say that? I had thought we were going to do this and now we're doing that. Well, you should have told me. And I don't think that that's very good. Cook. And then when you get that tight formulation, it's got such a shape of its own. Where are you going to find the shape in the world that will exactly fit into? It's highly unlikely. So you try to ram it into the other person, and of course they think, whoa. And then you see, again, you never listen to me. You never listen to me. Well, who would want to listen to that? And so we see it just goes on and on and on. And that's the tragedy in samsara. It's not that people are bad, it's that we're all off balance and we can't find that central point. So just as if you were learning something like Alexander technique and you're imagining this string coming out of the top of your head, do you have a sense? Oh, I feel straight, but if I look in the mirror, I'm off balance. So I can't trust my feeling. That's very important. Now, feelings, sensations, thoughts, because they are, as it were, inside us, feel very, very intimate. If I can't trust my feelings and thoughts, what will I rely on? Do I have to rely on other people? That's probably a bit scary, especially if you've had some difficulties in your life. You know, once burnt, twice shy. I'm going to trust myself. But I'm not very reliable, but I don't trust you. That's not a very nice place to be. What can I trust? What do we take refuge in? The mind itself, that is to say, the mind as an awareness free of content. So we're not relying on our unreliable thoughts, feelings and sensations. We're relaxing into the openness of the immediate awareness. That is always reliable. And why is it reliable? Because it doesn't have anything inside it. Emptiness won't let you down. That's quite strong. Stuff lets us down because it could be the wrong stuff. Having the right stuff at the right time is quite difficult. So we have huge logistics departments. I mean, there's some huge building construction going on. You've got these incredible programs for bringing in when do you need the plasters, when do you need the joiners and this and that, because all these jobs have to be dovetailed. That kind of analysis in the Second World War for developing the ways in which the somewhat hostile allies could collaborate together gave rise to modern systems theory, where we look at organizational systems or family systems and see how can complex interactions be managed in a way that has minimal friction and optimal synergy. Part of that is to realize that all systems operate in space. These are movements in space. And therefore, a shared sense of space has to occur. Now, the way that works in therapy is you remind people in the family that they're not the only person in the family, that other people exist. So in the old-fashioned Milan school, you would say to a child, I'd like to introduce you to someone. I don't think you've met them before. This is your father. Now, what your father needs to say to you now is, This is your bedtime, this is what you have to eat. I'd now like to introduce you to another person you haven't met. It's your mother. One other thing I have to tell you, as a child, your mother is not called Jean. Your mother is called Mother. And every time you call her Jean, you're lost. If you call this woman Mother, life will start to make more sense. So now you have a mom and a dad. That's pretty good. And that's really important, because then the system can start to operate, because there's a mom and a dad and there's kids. And the kids know they're kids because they've got a mom and a dad. But if you call your parents John and Jean, quite difficult, because the role starts to collapse. And the key thing about that is, what's being rectified is the proper working of a theatre. The stage is the emptiness of the potential of the environment they share, and within that, these characters in role can now start to elaborate the play of the family. Probably not a happy family, but anyway, a family that might survive, because people have a role. If you don't have a role, it's more difficult. So that's an ordinary level of example, that you need to have the empty stage for the theatre to be established, and people need to be in role. Now, can we allow the situation to determine our role? This links back to this general Buddhist notion of the Bodhisattva vow. In this and all my future lives, may I benefit sentient beings. Now, how do we benefit sentient beings? You could do it as a sergeant major, you could tell them what to do, you could have a superego function. I'm enlightened, I know the truth, you should do what I say. In the Western world, that probably wouldn't be very successful. Or you can do it through an attunement, getting close to the actual lived structure of the other, and finding a way of meeting and then working with them. Now, in order to do that, you have to allow the person to be there, as they are. And you have to allow yourself to be malleable. They can be fixed. I will unfix myself in order to find a fit. But why should I? It's not fair. It's not up to me. That's what makes it difficult, isn't it? That's the ego resistance. I mean, in the world of therapy, there are many stories of that, particularly, say, with people who have severe handicaps and they spend all day rocking. And then a therapist comes in and decides that they'll start rocking with the person. And after a while, the rocking changes and they start to come into some gestural conversation, and that can lead into a movement into language. There are many beautiful stories like that. It's much easier to do that as a therapist because you have permission to do it. But if you're in a complex family dynamics or you have difficulties at work, finding a way of moving yourself to make the fit with the other is often like pulling a rubber band. You make your gesture, but at a certain point you think, why am I off balance? Twang! These people, I don't know why I bother. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? We think we're being generous, but actually we've got the meter running. We're calculating the cost to ourselves. And that is because we have a home base. I know who I am. I know what I need. I know what I'm like. This is me. So the more defined we have ourselves as a person, you could say the more individuated we are, the more authentically ourselves we are. On one level we have more freedom, but on another level we have a great deal of limitation. Because we then become hypersensitive to being pulled out of the position that we take up. I remember many years ago working with a lady who had started a therapy centre in London. She was a very powerful lady and very able to make many things happen, but quite controlling. And one day she came to the conclusion, I have been shamed enough in my life, I will never let anyone shame me again. As a result of which she behaved shamefully for many years. Because any time anybody tried to say, what are you up to? Her interpretation was, don't you try to tell me who I am, don't you shame me, I can be who I want to be. And that's not very successful. From the point of view of Dzogchen, we are being invited all the time to become malleable, flexible, adaptive. What is it that gets in the way of that? Our resistance. What is the resistance based on? An overdetermined sense of who we are. Because actually, fitting is the basis of workability. If things don't fit together, how could they operate together? Because they're going to crash into each other. So how do we find a fit? How much do I need to expect of other people to make if I'm going to make my adaptation to fit them? If you do 50%, I'll do 50%. That's fair. If the other person only does 10% and I do 90%, maybe I'm a mug. Maybe I'm being in some kind of collusion with their need to be in control and to turn other people into their servant. Maybe. But if that is the limit of their existence at the moment, if you make it as a heartfelt gift to them, you won't be in collusion, because you'll know what you're doing. We're only in collusion when we're sucked into someone else's positioning. So, from the point of view of Dzogchen, we can go out of our way to be helpful to other people, if that seems the right thing, if it's the right time, and so on. Flexibility is okay if you can rebalance in each place you go to. So, for example, this brief time we've had here, we've done a couple of times this focusing on the breath or a simple external object. We decide, I'm going to focus on my breath. Now my mind is wandering off. Oh, I recognize that. I'm going to bring my mind back. I know where I should be. Therefore, when my mind goes off after something else, this is an error. If I bring myself back, I am now where I should be. Having a sense of where you should be is quite important in terms of the ego's domain. We can then work out where we stand in relation to other people. Awareness is like space. When the light first starts to come up in the morning, especially if you're in a place without clouds and it's kind of warm environment, you usually see it more. Before the sun has risen, you have this blessing of aurora. You get this diffuse light that spreads through the world. And it's as if everything has a very soft illumination. As when the sun comes up, immediately you get strong illumination and shadow and so on. But that soft illumination, pervasive, the light is everywhere and doesn't have yet a clearly defined source. When the sun's over the horizon, you can see the light's coming from the sun. That's used as an image to indicate awareness is everywhere. So when we're sitting and meditating, thoughts are arising. If you find yourself caught up in a thought, it links with some other thoughts, and it takes you here. Then you think, oh, now I'm here. Where do I have to go to get back to where I am? Here or here? The mind is everywhere. wherever you are, you're in the natural openness of the mind. Now, if you taste that, you'll never get lost. You'll never get lost. So in our ordinary life, we get caught up in stuff, we get maybe a bit depressed, or we're worried about things, maybe fearful about getting older, or whatever it would be, and the mind starts turning around in that. Maybe might think, I've been studying Buddhism, I shouldn't be like that, I should be another kind of person. I need to take myself out of this and put myself in a better place. From the point of view of Dzogchen, the question is, where are you in your depression, in your anxiety? Where is that? Who is the one who is feeling the depression? This is the open awareness of the mind. So if you just stay present with whatever is occurring, in that very place itself is natural freedom. But if you imagine that there's a better place to be, you will give up natural or intrinsic freedom by going in search of a constructed freedom, which is to say, your conceptual notion of where a better place would be. In the midst of depression, there is space. In the midst of anxiety, worry, confusion, self-hatred, self-doubt, I hate myself, I always get it wrong, I don't know, I feel so embarrassed, I don't want to go back there, people will be thinking. If you get into a tumble of that, what is the moon? What is the sun? The bit of you that is saying, I can't bear it, I'm going to feel so stupid, I wish I hadn't done that. You can feel all the... That looks like, I see myself and I'm used